We've all sat through long lectures with one PowerPoint slide after another, with the presenter simply reading the slides, sometimes even with their back to the audience. After 15 to 20 minutes, our minds start to wander and we find ourselves losing track of what's being said. Evidence shows that even the best minds can't stay attentive to someone talking for long periods of time. If we take notes, they are often incomplete or inaccurate and do not necessarily reflect what was told to us during the presentation. We may even have given some of these presentations ourselves. We hear much about how active learning is the solution to these problems. Strategies to help our audience process what we've told them so they're able to more easily recall and make use of what we've given them to remember. Terms such as case-based learning, team-based learning, role play, and flipped classrooms are written about at length as specific ways to better engage our students. But what are the challenges that come into play in order to construct an effective active learning session, specifically a flipped classroom, and how do we as educators overcome those challenges? How do we respond to students who sometimes push back on our attempts to engage them, telling us that we're not really teaching? Welcome to Teach Well, Learn Well, a podcast series highlighting the scholarship being published by members of the University of Tennessee Health Science Center's community about effective ways to teach. I'm Tom Lochner of UTHSC's Teaching and Learning Center. Each month, we interview members of our faculty about their research and its impact on the higher education community. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Aditi Kesari from UT Health Science Center's College of Medicine. She and Janessa McElfresh, Associate Professor in the University Library, recently presented a poster titled A Scoping Review of Medical Educators' Perspectives on the Challenges of the Flipped Classroom, Strategies and Tips to Address Them, at the International Association of Medical Science Educators annual meeting. Welcome, Aditi.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Tom.
Looking forward to this conversation. My first question has to do with didactic classes in general. So, in the medical curriculum, how have didactic classes generally been conducted?
Well, didactic classes in the medical curriculum are like your regular lectures. In these sessions, instructors deliver their teaching material in a classroom setting. It is more of a teacher centered method, and students usually don't have an active role to play in this setting.
So, sometimes these lectures in medical settings go on for 2 to 3 to maybe 4 hours.
Generally, our lectures are 50 minutes long. Some lectures can be 1 hour 20 minutes, but then there are sessions back to back. So yes, when we add everything together, it can go on for 2 to 3 hours.
How effective is this way of teaching?
So, didactic sessions do have certain advantages. For example, the transfer of knowledge mainly happens live in the classroom setting. So, you can see your students and get a feel of whether students are understanding the material, and based on that, you can modify your session. Also, some good instructors can actively engage students in their learning process. So, yes, a didactic session can be effective to a certain extent. However, there are limitations to it. Since the main goal of the didactic session is to deliver the content, less time is available for active discussion of applications of that content. Also, there is very little scope for providing formative feedback to the students in this setting.
You talk about other methods of learning and ways to engage students through active learning. Can you talk specifically about what a flipped classroom is and why is it replacing lecture-based courses?
A flipped classroom is a teaching method in which the lecture content is delivered outside the class and the precious classroom time is used for active learning exercises and case based discussions. That way, we can focus more on the application based problem solving in the class. By doing that, we get an opportunity to assess our students in a low stakes environment and also provide formative feedback right then and there. And so we can actively engage our students in their learning process by doing a flipped classroom.
What do faculty think about flipped classroom?
Well, there is a lot of literature to support that flipped classrooms or lectures are more effective than traditional didactic lectures. And while most medical educators appreciate this and are willing to adopt this innovative teaching method, They are apprehensive of some of the challenges that come along with it. We need to understand that developing and curating flip lectures is a time and labor intensive process. And then there are other challenges as well with technology, content, student preparedness, and student participation. So, even though faculty are willing to incorporate this teaching strategy, it may not always be feasible to apply it to all lectures immediately.
So you mentioned time, and time is the expensive commodity. So how do you encourage faculty to take the time to put together a flipped class?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we need to acknowledge that developing flip lectures is a time and labor intensive process, especially if we are putting together a session for the very first time. And that is because when we are developing a flip lectures, we first need to design the pre-study material, and then it needs to be recorded and made available to the students. Then we also need to work on the in-class session activities, and these activities need to have enough case-based scenarios that can help students to develop their problem-solving skills. So basically, if we want to make an effective flipped classroom, we need to invest enough time initially. But there are ways to make things easy. For example, if we find online resources that are credible and reliable, we can use these as pre study material. There are also some journals like MedEd Portal that publish all the materials required for flipped classrooms or team based learnings. And you can search through these journals to see if a flipped lecture has already been made by another educator on the topic you plan to teach. So there are some options available. Now, if you don't find any resources or you want to develop your own material, you can gradually start converting your lectures to flipped classrooms. You can either choose to just convert few sessions per semester, or you can try to adopt a hybrid approach before entirely flipping the classroom.
Those are some excellent suggestions. The two things I heard was one, make good use of resources that are already out there, and you listed some excellent resources, especially MedEd Portal that has some really great stuff out there. And secondly, I think the really good advice that you have is that you don't need to do it all at once. You start out slowly and do one class at a time. And the advantage of that is that you get some really good feedback from your students about what's going well and what's not going so well as you're investing your time in converting to the flipped classroom. Excellent advice. One of the things I hear from faculty sometimes is that students don't like active learning or flipped classrooms, that students just want to be told what they need to know so that they can pass their board exams. What would some advice be that you would give to faculty who are trying to work with students who are giving them this pushback? The other pushback that we get sometimes is that students saying that we're not really teaching them, that they're teaching themselves when they have to watch these lectures outside of class and share with each other the ideas of how to build their knowledge.
So, the key here is to strike the right balance between clinically relevant information and board relevant material. Most of the time, these two overlap and then everyone is happy, right? But when these materials don't overlap, instructors should make sure to let their students know the significance of things they are learning. And so, having clear learning objectives right at the beginning can help address this situation.
I think that's excellent advice. And I think that I hear often that students don't understand the reason that they're doing these activities, which leads to them not understanding that they're actually learning something.
And so, going back to learning objectives, having clear learning objectives is really helpful in this case since it defines the scope of the session and lets the students know what is expected from them. These learning objectives need to be covered sufficiently in the pre study material so that students can have all the necessary information required for problem solving that happens during the in class sessions and in the in-class session. And the in-class session activities should reinforce the concepts covered in the pre-study in a way that these activities should reflect the clinical applications of that material and allow for higher order thinking. And there is evidence that shows satisfaction with flipped lectures is actually higher among students than with regular lectures.
Faculty are also worried about their student evaluations. So some faculty report that their evaluations actually go down when they switch to flipped classrooms because students don't feel like they're learning anything. How do you address concerns about student evaluations?
It does take time and patience to deliver an efficient flipped lecture. During this time, faculty need to create a safe space for themselves to learn and experiment with this technique. Also, medicine is an ever evolving field and there are bound to be knowledge gaps, and so faculty should just use this opportunity to fill in those gaps.
After you've put together this poster, what are some unanswered questions that you have yet? What are your next steps?
While there is a lot of literature on student perspectives of flipped lectures and their performance, there is very little literature on faculty perspectives, especially the challenges they face when they use flipped classroom method. So currently, I'm working with Janissa McElfresh from the library on a scoping review to understand these perspectives. In the future, I would like to deep dive into individual challenges that faculty face while trying to adopt this teaching methodology. I would like to know if there are any differences in perspectives of junior faculty versus more seasoned faculty. Similarly, I would also like to explore differences in perspectives of faculty teaching in the pre clerkship phase versus faculty teaching in the clerkship phase.
Yeah, it strikes me that if we're going to want faculty to incorporate more active learning into their teaching, it's vitally important that we understand their perspectives as well so that we can help them with the challenges that they're trying to overcome. That is this month's episode of Teach Well, Learn Well. Dr. Kesari, we appreciate your insight into flipped classrooms, the challenges they bring, as well as solutions to overcome them. We look forward to your future research and insight into how we can better incorporate flipped classrooms into our learning. So, Dr. Kesari, thank you very much.
Thank you so much once again.